Today I'll be doing a quick review of the Aimpoint Acro P2. This is Aimpoint's latest entry into the subcompact, pistol-sized red dot sight market. So this device is primarily competing with Trijicon's RMR, which is Trijicon's pistol-mounted optic. Obviously, some big differences here are that the Aimpoint is a closed emitter, the RMR is an open emitter. Aimpoint is a little bit bigger, and there are a few other differences that I will go over. I think comparing this to the RMR is probably the most productive strategy here because a lot of people are very familiar with the RMR and very likely these are the two options they're considering. So I'll just sort of explain some of the differences between these two. First, I'll talk about some downsides of the Acro compared to the RMR. One is that the viewing window is relatively small compared to the size of the device. So, the viewing window is maybe half the size of the device and you have these super thick walls, which cause a fair amount of visual occlusion when you're using this sight. So it doesn't get out of the way as much as the RMR does just because of that extra thickness. Another downside is that this has no auto brightness. So this only has manual brightness controls. There's no setting where you can, push both of these or something and it will dynamically adjust its brightness to match ambient conditions. Whereas with the RMR, you can just push both buttons at the same time. And if you go outside, it'll get brighter. If you go inside, it'll get dimmer. And that's a really nice feature that we don't have here. Another big downside is that this is significantly more expensive than an RMR. You can get an RMR for in the $400 to $450 range easily. This device, I haven't seen it sell for less than $600 yet. It could just be because, it's new and they're still ramping up production. Maybe the price will come down over time, but for now, this is about 50% more expensive than the RMR. Now, that said, given those three downsides, there are some significant upsides. One is that, as I mentioned earlier, this is a closed emitter optic. I think this upside is actually a little bit overstated by most people. Basically, the concern is that because the LED is not really exposed, it's still behind glass, but the LED is more exposed on the RMR. In principle, a raindrop or a piece of water or mud or something could get on the LED and obscure it on the RMR. I've used RMRs in rain before, and in practice I haven't had this issue, but I understand why people are worried about it. With this guy, because it's a closed emitter, you might get some mud on the glass or whatever, but you can just wipe it off pretty quickly and you'll still be up and running. So that's really nice. The glass on this guy is definitely better. It's not as good as some other Aimpoints, and I'll show a quick comparison video after this, but it's definitely better than the RMR in terms of you get more light transmission and less blue tint with this guy. Even though there are two pieces of glass and the RMR just has one. I don't know what the difference is there. Maybe Trijicon is focusing more on preventing LED visibility downrange or something, or maybe it's just cheaper to make the less transparent glass. I'm not sure, but the glass on this guy is better. A big upside for me is that you can replace the battery on this optic without removing it from the gun. Whereas with the RMR, of course, you have to unscrew the optic from the mount to change the battery, which could in theory impact zero. I think in practice it doesn't change the zero that much, but it is annoying and it's just one more thing to worry about. And then finally, another big upside for me, I just trust Aimpoint more with electro-optics. I think Trijicon fiber optics are super reliable, they're super well made, but I have had multiple problems with Trijicon electro-optics. I've had RMR battery contact issues. I've had an SRO die when I put it on a shotgun, and a couple minor issues like that. Whereas with an Aimpoint, I've had a Comp M5 for a while, and I've had a Micro T2 for several years. In fact, I think it's got to be 5 or 6 years at this point. And I have really abused them, and they've stood up to everything. So I think Aimpoint has more experience building reliable electro-optics, and for LED-powered things, if it's something I'm going to trust my life to, I'd rather it be Aimpoint than Trijicon. Again, Trijicon fiber, I totally trust that. I think that stuff's great. But for their battery-powered stuff like the RMR, excuse me, I think I would prefer to go with Aimpoint from a reliability perspective. Okay, so let's go ahead and compare the transmission of these optics. As you can see, the glass on the Comp M5 is the best out of these three. The RMR is probably the worst, and the P2 is somewhere in the middle. Although honestly, all of these optics have pretty good transmission, and under IR, they're all quite good as well. In fact, they might even be closer together under IR than they are under visible. This is an IR light. You can see it's difficult to tell the difference. Under visible, it's pretty easy, but here it's hard. As a final note, here's a quick comparison with the Comp M5. From the front, they're actually pretty dimensionally similar. They're kind of the same width and height. The length is obviously the primary difference. I've got a little extra length on the Comp M5 because of these kill flashes and optic covers, but this is probably, I would say, 60% the length of the entire Comp M5 without any optic covers. So if you're thinking about using this as a rifle optic, I think that might actually work pretty well. That's what I have planned for this guy right now. There's a company selling mounts where you can put these on top of a D-ball. So at some point I will get that mounted on there and go for sort of a lightweight red dot, red IR laser combo. But yeah, definitely, not earth-shakingly small or anything, but just small enough that it makes sense to put it on a pistol, and certainly also usable on a rifle as well.